Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having a good day or are having a lovely night because I am about to ruin it. I'm so sorry, but not really. This is another episode of Should You Read This Danmei / Memorable Chinese BL Scenes. We are coming from Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 4. If you want to take a look, we're coming from Chapter 65, End the Deadlock, Water Master Battles Demon Xuan. We're not covering the entire chapter, but rather going from pages 232 to 252. This is one that has been requested more than once, so we're going to start. Enjoy, maybe? Ming Yi stared at him for a moment, but ultimately seemed to abandon the idea. He glanced at the reopened gash on his own arm and didn't say another word. Just then, the longevity lock around Shi Xuan's neck started vibrating. Color drained from Shi Xuan's face. Ming Yi reacted immediately and started moving in the direction the longevity lock pointed. Lord Water Master is over there. The golden lock's resonance meant that Shi Wudu was wounded. He'd been perfectly well when he entered the array, so what had hurt him since then? Xielian could sense that Shi Xuan was torn. He was anxious to go, but at the same time very reluctant to do so. They were trapped in Blackwater Lake's illusion, and there was no one else on the island who could help. Pei Ming was building a coffin boat outside the illusion and waiting for their return, and Shi Xuan was currently mortal. If Shi Wudu was injured, they'd have nowhere to turn for help. How could they possibly escape if they delivered themselves right to the master's doorstep? They hurried to follow in the lock's wake. Shi Xuan tried to speak up. Ming Xiong, I think it's a trap. It's probably best not to go. What trap? Ming Yi asked. To answer him, Shi Xuan spun a bold-faced lie. How could my brother possibly get hurt? It can't be him over there. Unfortunately, unlike Shi Xuan, Ming Yi still had a firm hold on logic. We're in a Supreme Ghost King's territory. Lord Watermaster might not have what it takes to protect himself. Let's go there and take a look first. Shi Xuan couldn't think of a reason not to go, and Xielian was equally stumped. He watched in silence, planning to play it by ear. They followed the longevity lock, using its vibrations as a guide to grow closer and closer to the target, until finally they found Shi Wudu curled in on himself on the ground. He was holding his stomach, and he looked distressed and in immense pain. Gah! Shi Xuan cried. He rushed over with Ming Yi trailing close behind. However, when they approached Shi Wudu, the prone figure leapt to his feet and erupted into maniacal laughter as he pulled Shi Xuan into a hug. Shi Xuan was utterly bewildered as he stood enveloped in those arms, and he only belatedly realized how twisted the man's face was. This wasn't Shi Wudu. It was only a madman dressed in his robes and wearing his golden lock pendant. Shi Xuan hadn't even opened his mouth to speak when Ming Yi abruptly collapsed next to him. His chest now had a hole in it the size of a fist, and his blood spilled upon the ground. A figure in white leapt from the tree, grabbed Shi Xuan, and dragged him along as he fled. Run! Upon closer inspection, Xielian saw that it was the real Shi Wudu. Gah! Shi Xuan exclaimed. Don't talk. Just come with me. He's no good. Shi Wudu ordered in a hushed, urgent voice. In a flash, Xielian understood what had happened. As it turned out, Shi Wudu wasn't one to be underestimated. He knew something was off the moment he walked out of the transportation array's chamber and saw he was still in the Netherwater Manor. Shi Wudu didn't overthink things like Xielian, and he was much sharper. He immediately suspected Ming Yi, so he hid in the shadows to watch and determine what he was up to. He and Shi Xuan were probably sent to different locations. Otherwise, he would have brought Shi Xuan along to hide. After spotting Mingyi and Shi Xuan together, Shi Wudu had seized a madman and dressed him in his outer robes and golden lock pendant, then hit him with a blast to wound him. It was all bait to lure in Mingyi and distract him from the ambush he had planned. It was a ruthless move. There wasn't any solid proof that Mingyi had actually tampered with anything, but Shi Wudu had still shot to kill. Shi Xuan couldn't help but look back. When he did, he saw Mingyi lying as still as a corpse, and then he sat up. The blast had pierced right through his heart. He stoically looked down to stare at the gory hole, then slowly rose to his feet. Shi Xuan's blood ran cold, and Xilian could feel it in his own heart. Even a heavenly official shouldn't be able to move so easily after being wounded this severely. He had to be something inhuman. As the two brothers continued their flight, suddenly the hairs on the back of Xilian's neck stood all at once. "Watch out!" He yanked at the Water Master. A sharp noise whistled by, leaving a chilling light in its wake. The Water Master would have lost his head if not for Xilian's tug. Those invisible creatures from the water's reflection had returned. Shi Wudu cursed. Then he flipped the Water Master fan open backward and swung. Several long, thin water arrows shot from the waves painted on the surface of his fan, and they encircled their bodies to form a protective shield. The invisible creatures couldn't do anything to breach the barrier, and the two brothers continued to run. Shi Xuan couldn't help but look back again. This time, he could feel his hair stand on end. He's catching up. Sure enough, Mingyi was about 70 meters behind, following them at a heavy, dolorous pace. Although his steps appeared slow, the distance between him and the two brothers grew significantly shorter with each one he took. It looked as though, in just a few more steps, he'd be able to touch the hems of their robes. Shi Wudu never looked back. With another swing of his fan, 20 or 30 more dragon-shaped water arrows shot forth. With one more swing, their numbers doubled. He fluttered the fan rapidly, and the hundreds of razor-sharp water arrows hurtled toward Mingyi and barraged him from all sides. Though they were made of water, they slashed through the air like steel blades. If he took a single misstep, his body would be riddled with holes. And yet, Mingyi caught the very first water arrow with his bare hands. He yanked like it was the end of a rope, and with that motion, the Water Master fan was snatched from Shi Wudu's hand. The water dragon arrows dancing wildly in the skies dissolved the moment the fan left his hand, and a weak drizzle rained upon them. Shi Wudu abruptly stopped in his tracks and looked at his hand in disbelief. Over his centuries-long tenure, no one had ever been able to seize the Water Master fan from his hand. He now knew he couldn't escape and finally looked back. Mingyi was still stalking steadily toward them with his hands clasped behind his back. He was going through an intricate full-body transformation. With every step, a change occurred. His already blanched face became even paler until it resembled Hua Cheng's bloodless translucence. His forehead grew sharper, his brows deeper, and these shifts made him appear even more somber. Upon his black robes, subtle patterns of waves appeared on the once unremarkable corners of the hems, woven with thin threads and shimmering with a mysterious silver glow. By the time he arrived before the Wind and Water Masters, although his face was mostly the same, he was clearly a completely different person. The Earth Master wasn't a martial god, so he had no talent for martial arts and his spiritual powers were only average. However, neither of these points applied to the one before them now. "What exactly are you?" Shi Wudu cautiously demanded. Mingyi seemed to find the question funny. He squinted in amusement. "You're standing in my territory, yet you still need to ask." "Blackwater Demon Xuan?" Shi Wudu ventured. Mingyi turned his gaze to Shi Xuan, but Shi Xuan didn't react. "You've always been the Earth Master, or—" Shi Wudu trailed off and seemed to come to a conclusion similar to Xilian's. "I see. But he had only realized that Black Water Demon Xuan had infiltrated the heavens. You and I have always minded our own business. Well water doesn't interfere with that of rivers, and we've likewise ruled over our own domains, Shi Wudu said. It was not my intent to intrude in your territory, so why don't we both take a step back? Well, well, Water Tyrant. It seems there are times when you dare not be tyrannical, Mingyi mused aloud. Shi Wudu was proud by nature, and displeasure flashed across his face at this comment. Since they were under someone else's roof and his younger brother was by his side, he had to lower his head, but he still wasn't willing to back down. I would have no reason to fear you, were it not the wrong place and time. Mingyi took another step forward. Shi Wudu, look at my face, he said icily. Do you know who I am? Shi Wudu stared at him, a frown creasing his mouth. He had seen the Earth Master so few times, so he didn't understand what he was trying to say. Who do you want me to say you are? He paused for a moment, thinking Mingyi was hinting that his identity must not be revealed. He offered, It doesn't matter who you are. I swear on my Water Master title, as long as you don't involve me or my brother, nothing you do will concern me. Mingyi frigidly cut him off before he could finish. Men of importance truly have short memories. Water Tyrant, how many mortal names and mortal births did you so arduously flip through to find me? It hasn't even been, what, a few 100 years? And you've already forgotten what I look like? Shi Wudu's face contorted by degrees as he listened to this. There was a mortal idiom for manifested terror. You look as though you've seen a ghost. For the first time in his life, Shi Wudu showed that very expression on his face. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. You're still alive? He blurted. I'm dead. He Xuan coldly corrected him. With 4 fingers pressed together, he swung his palm upward. Xilian felt a sudden pain surge through his skull. It seemed He Xuan's spiritual field had affected Ch.65's body, and they fainted. An unknown amount of time passed before Xilian and Ch.65 slowly regained consciousness together. Xilian could feel something rubbing back and forth against him. As he sluggishly opened his eyes, he saw that he was being nuzzled by several foul-smelling, hairy heads. A mob of madmen surrounded him, giggling and looking shy as they felt him all over. Xilian remained fairly calm at the sight, as he determined that their peculiar attention wasn't life-threatening. The madmen were just a little dirty, not a threat. However, Ch.65 was appalled. He wanted to push them away immediately, but loud clings and clangs sounded with each attempt. There was coldness around his hands and feet, and he couldn't move an inch. When he looked down, he realized that he was cuffed to the wall by iron chains as thick as wooden clubs. His arms were raised up high. From the look of the floors and ceilings, he was probably back at the Nether Water Manor. Xilian could feel exactly what Ch.65 was feeling, which at the moment was a deep, searing pain in his head. He tried to bid the Lord Wind Master to be calm, to assure him that he would teach him how to break free from cuffs such as these. But he abruptly realized that he couldn't make a single sound. Perplexed, Xilian quickly took stock of his own condition and found that a large portion of his spiritual power had been lost. His soul was still able to stay in Ch.65's body, but he could no longer manipulate him or even speak to warn him. Could the spiritual powers he borrowed from Hua Cheng have run dry? Impossible. Hua Cheng knew exactly how much spiritual power it took to perform the soul-shifting spell, and he had given him an extremely generous loan of significantly more than what was needed and not a bit less. And Xilian could sense the powers draining away with each passing moment. It was making him both leery and anxious. A raspy voice called out from across the room. Qing Xuan! Ch.65's vision was blurry, but when he focused his eyes in the voice's direction, he could see that it was Shi Wudu calling him. Shi Wudu wasn't fettered by iron shackles, but he was kneeling on the ground. His white bones were filthy and in wild disarray. Relief visibly flashed over his face when he saw Ch.65 wake up, and he seemed to want to come over. However, his attempt was thwarted. He was kicked down by the one standing next to him and forced to kneel anew. The man standing there wore a cruel, sinister expression, and his hands were clasped behind him. His skin was so pale it sent shivers down one's spine. This was Black Water Demon Xuan, or rather, He Xuan. There was an altar behind him. 4 smooth, obsidian-black urns sat serenely upon it. 2 shredded fans were discarded on the floor, the Wind Master fan and the Water Master fan. Father, mother, sister, fiancé. Kowtow, He Xuan ordered. Shi Wudu kept his eyes on Ch.65. He gave a single word in response. Fine. With that, surprisingly, he heeded. He moved to kneel before the altar and kowtowed before the urns over a dozen times. Thud, thud, thud. After this, he attempted to raise his head, but He Xuan's foot came down heavily and stumped his skull back in place. Did I permit you to rise? He coldly asked. This brutal move pinned Shi Wudu's face to the floor. Shi Wudu answered through gritted teeth, blood running from every orifice. No. His elder brother was once so proud that his head never bowed, but now his face was being stumped into the dirt. Although Ch.65 knew he deserved retribution 10 times worse for what he'd done, blood was thicker than water. Ultimately, he couldn't bear to see him like this. Gah! He Xuan's attention was drawn by the sound of Ch.65's voice, and he was now the focus of that chilling glare. Even though he couldn't raise his head, Shi Wudu knew that meek cry would do nothing but provoke their captor. Be quiet! He barked at once. After a moment's thought, He Xuan removed his boot from his head. Shi Wudu was filled with trepidation, but had no strength to drag himself up. Xuan, he groaned. He Xuan languidly approached the wall. The madmen scampered away whimpering. They were obviously terrified of him. However, they still sneaked glances at Ch.65, as if there was something on him they coveted. Ch.65 watched from where he was chained as He Xuan came closer, step by step. The ever-so-familiar face that Ch.65 once knew was now dreadfully foreign. He Xuan crouched in front of him. He was quiet for a moment before he asked, Is the Reverend of Empty Words scary? Though his tone was smooth and calm, Ch.65 was bug-eyed with fear. He couldn't speak a word in response through his quivering lips. The Reverend of Empty Words of the past was already extremely horrifying. The person looking at him now had swallowed the Reverend of Empty Words. He was 10 times, 100 times more terrifying than the nightmare of his younger years. But that terror was something Ch.65 should have endured from the start. He Xuan, Shi Wudu called to him. A man must answer alone for what he's done. It was my idea to use you to ward off his misfortune. This has nothing to do with my little brother. He Xuan sneered. Nothing to do with him. Without blinking once, he stared at Ch.65 and spoke each word with clear enunciation and intent. Your little brother, an ordinary, common mortal, obtained the ability to ascend. His endless glory was plundered from my fate. He enjoyed my divinity. And you tell me that this has nothing to do with him? Every word was a knife, and every cut stabbed the heart. This was said for Ch.65 to hear, and though he knew it all by now, he still bowed his head and felt like he could never hold it high again. You've always been by his side, so you should know very well that I'm not lying to you, Shi Wudu said with forced calm. He's not one to hide anything. From start to finish, he genuinely did not know. That's precisely why he's so detestable, He Xuan interrupted sharply. Why was he allowed to know nothing? Ch.65's head bowed even lower. What right did he have to suck another's blood and trample another's bones to reach the skies, all the while maintaining his peace of mind, to enjoy such luxuries without any sense of burden? He didn't know then, but is he still so ignorant? He Xuan added. Ch.65 looked up. His voice trembled. Mingxiong, Shut up! He Xuan shouted. When Ch.65 saw his near-savage expression, he shuddered and went silent. He Xuan whirled around and started pacing the hall of the Netherwater Manor, growling as he walked. I gave you so many chances. Ch.65 closed his eyes and clenched his fists. Shelian recalled that excessively furious, Fine. Very well. Back when they were in the town of Fugu. He remembered how Ming Yi had tried to stop Ch.65 from following Pei Ming to the East Sea, but each time, Ch.65 had chosen to help Shi Wudu. I'm sorry, Ch.65 whispered. He Xuan stopped in his tracks. What good is your apology? He demanded. The 4 urns had been placed directly in Ch.65's field of view, and it seemed as if they too jeered at his featherlight sorry. Misery pierced his heart and scorched his insides as if his words meant nothing no matter what he said. I know it's futile, but Ch.65 pleaded. But you what? He Xuan's tone returned to its cold indifference. You know it's futile, but you still want to express your utmost sincerity? Are you hoping you can move me? Make me let go of this grudge and allow my resentment to dissolve? No, that's not what I meant, Ch.65 said hastily. It's just, I really am very sorry that I wronged you. Really, Ming, He, I know that both my brother and I are in the wrong. There's no remedying the situation at this point, so... He Xuan was listening intently. So? At this point, any further words would only sound feeble and pathetic. Ch.65 tried desperately to come up with something, but he drew a blank and was unable to continue. Well, talk. Why did you stop? He Xuan asked coldly. So are you willing to die for your sins? Ch.65 was shocked. Shi Wudu couldn't listen anymore and shouted, He Xuan, the offense was mine and the reverend of empty words. Qing Xuan's sin doesn't merit a death sentence. You... And who in my family sinned? He Xuan counted. Who in my family deserved death? Shi Wudu choked. Go on, tell me, He Xuan continued. Are you willing? I am, Ch.65 whispered. He Xuan sneered at this. Since Ch.65 had his head bowed, Shelian couldn't see his expression, but he probably wouldn't be able to discern what he was feeling even if he saw. He Xuan stalked away with his hands clasped behind him. That group of madmen saw him leave and came to surround Ch.65 once more, hugging his arms and thighs and refusing to let go. Some tugged at his hair, some draped themselves around his neck. Each of them had a ravenous glint in his eyes, like he wanted to eat him alive. Shelian had lived among the homeless in the past, but even he felt his hair stand on end. Just who are these people? Why did Demon Xuan gather a bunch of madmen here? Ch.65 silently endured the pushing and shoving of the madmen, tolerating their pulling and dragging, too frightened to make a sound. He Xuan observed detachedly for a while before he spoke. Do you know who these people are? Emaciated, claw-like fingers felt all over Ch.65's face and body. He didn't even dare to breathe, much less ponder who those people were, so he shook his head. Rotten faces, contemptuous fortunes, lives lower than an animal's, fates that can drive a man mad, He Xuan explained. ... Cold dread washed over Shelian. He had an inkling of what He Xuan planned to do. Shi Wudu understood at once, his eyes bulging. You... He Xuan stood between Shi Wudu and Ch.65. I'm giving you 2 options. He pointed at Shi Wudu. Option 1. Pick one individual from this crowd and exchange your brother's fate with theirs. And then, go make yourself scarce in the mortal realm. Shi Wudu's eyes grew bloodshot, and his shoulders started to shake. Since you enjoy switching fates so much, you must be quite skilled at it, He Xuan commented. No need for me to guide you through the process. If the motives behind this punishment were disregarded, then it was truly vicious. Although Shi Xuan's original fate wasn't good enough to ascend, it was still a life filled with peaceful luxury and leisure. The madmen, on the other hand, were racked with disease and rotten sores and had been driven to madness by adversity. It was clear that every single one of them was ensnared by an absolutely wretched, miserable fortune. If Shi Xuan exchanged fates with any of them, wouldn't that mean he would fall into the same tragic state? Such fates would drive one to madness in and of themselves. Faced with this disaster, it was obvious Shi Wudu now had no chance of passing his heavenly tribulation. Furthermore, he would no doubt be banished now that the affair with the Reverend of Empty Words had been revealed. Once banished to the mortal realm, he would no longer be able to switch Shi Xuan's fate to a better one. A common mortal with his power stripped away, and a common mortal suffering the most wretched of fortunes. How could they possibly keep living? Shi Wudu huffed a breath and gritted his teeth. And the second option? The second option, He Xuan continued. You. This time, he eyed Shi Xuan. Each word was spoken slowly and clearly. I won't touch your fate. Chop off your brother's head. Right here. Clang! He threw a rusty knife to the floor. Shi Xuan stared at it, his eyes wide. And then never show yourself to me again. In return, I will pretend you never existed. His bones had steeped in the brine of hatred for centuries, and it had boiled over all at once. Anyone could see the fervent madness that burned in his eyes. Anyone could see that he wasn't bluffing. After a moment of silence, Shi Wudu croaked. I'll kill myself. Let me do it myself. You have no right to bargain with me, He Xuan stated. Shi Wudu glanced at Shi Xuan. You're asking for our lives, he mumbled miserably. Shi Xuan, however, hadn't succumbed to despair just yet. Let's choose the first option. The first one, he said hurriedly. A moment later, Shi Wudu regained control of himself. No, I choose the second one. ... Shi Xuan was dumbfounded. Why the second option? Can't we both live? Let's go with the first one. I really can't do the second. Quiet, Shi Wudu furiously snapped. Don't you know me? You think I can do it? Lose everything and be forced to watch you become a filthy wretch? You might as well infuriate me to death. Shi Xuan exclaimed. Let it go. Clinging to one's life is still better than a good death. Besides, really, if you think about it, we've lived for centuries now. It's time to... As he spoke, he seemed to remember just how well he had lived the past few hundred years, and he was so ashamed he didn't dare continue. He Xuan was still watching them coldly. Shi Wudu arduously crawled to his feet. He grabbed the rust-mottled knife and stumbled to the wall, then grasped his younger brother's shoulder. Come. Then he whispered harshly, Go find General Pei. Ask him to take care of you. The blade was terrifyingly heavy and covered in rust. It'd be difficult to even kill a chicken with it, never mind a man. Both the executioner and the target would suffer greatly if it was used to cut off someone's head. Shi Xuan was so horrified he couldn't keep hold of it and kept dropping it on the ground. Forget it. Haven't you always told me that everyone only cares for themselves and that there's no reason anyone would look out for us? Haven't we always taken care of ourselves? Don't give this thing to me. Don't give it to me. Xuan, don't be so immature, Shi Wudu barked. Then he smiled wryly. Your brother's nicknamed the Water Tyrant. It's not like you don't know that. Over all these years, I've raised so many waves that have shaken the world. There have been at least 800, if not 1,000. I have nothing but enemies from heaven to hell. It'll be easier if I die. If I die, then nothing else will happen to you. But if I survive while losing everything, that's a fate worse than death. If I'm not the water god, I can't take care of you. I won't even be able to protect myself. We probably won't last 2 days out there. Take it. Shi Xuan was so scared he was going to weep. No, I can't, Ge. I can't, I really can't, he exclaimed uncontrollably. Don't force me. Don't give it to me. Help, help, help. He started screaming with every fiber of his being, wailing until he was hoarse, crying desperately to be saved. It's all right, Shi Wudu exclaimed. Don't be scared, Qing Xuan. This won't hurt as much as exchanging fates or stripping away spiritual power. He Xuan had been infinitely patient up to this point, but now he lashed out with a kick. Shi Wudu sputtered a mouthful of blood as he was knocked over, and he hit the ground hard, unable to get up. Shi Xuan, still bound to the wall, screamed in distress. Ge! Quiet! Enough of this revolting brotherly love act, He Xuan said chillingly. No one here will be moved by you. Shi Wudu coughed up a large amount of blood. Suddenly, he flipped onto his back and leapt to his feet, and then seized Shi Xuan by the neck. Shilian was shocked. He felt his lungs cease to draw breath and blood rushed to his head. Ge! Shi Xuan gasped. Qing Xuan, I can't leave you alone like this. Shi Wudu bit out through his bloodied mouth. There's no way you'll survive in the world if I die, so you might as well come with Ge. He squeezed hard. Shi Xuan's sight was going dark, and a death rattle escaped his throat. Shilian was shocked to the core. Was Lord Water Master really going to strangle Lord Wind Master to death? It didn't take long for the pressure on his throat to disappear. Fresh air poured in as Shi Xuan gasped and coughed uncontrollably, then finally caught his breath as the choking stopped. He Xuan stood next to them. He had ripped off both of Shi Wudu's arms at the elbows, halting the attempt to wring Shi Xuan's neck. Did I give you a third path? He said coldly. Blood pulsed like a fountain from Shi Wudu's mangled arms, yet he began to laugh uproariously. He Xuan tossed the forearms aside like they were trash. What are you laughing about? Shi Wudu waved his long, empty, blood-soaked sleeves. I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at how you think you've gotten the upper hand. Do you think you've finally gotten your revenge after so many years of waiting? Does it feel good? It does feel good, seeing you on the brink of death like this, He Xuan confirmed. Is that right? Shi Wudu laughed. Let me tell you something. I feel good too. He caught He Xuan's collar with his profusely bleeding, mutilated arms. Because I see you right now. So filled with rage, so filled with suffering, so filled with hate. You've been grinding your teeth so hard you're crushing them. And yet, you're still powerless to bring your family back. You're still nothing more than a ghost of the gutters. Be as angry as you want. They're long gone. But me and my brother, we've lived for ages. We've been heavenly officials for centuries. Even if he can't be one anymore, even if he can't live anymore, he still profited. I still won. And so I feel even better than you. The longer he listened, the more He Xuan's pale face dropped. His expression was like a frozen, barren land had been set ablaze with ghost fire. The air in the chamber grew suddenly freezing cold. Shi Xuan was terrified to the core. Gah! Don't talk anymore, he croaked hoarsely. Can you please stop? Gah! My God, what are you saying? What nonsense are you spewing? He Xuan's hand shot out and seized Shi Wudu's neck. You! Have you no remorse? Shi Wudu laughed maniacally. Remorse? What a joke. Ship sinking Blackwater. To think you're a supreme ghost king. You want to talk to me about remorse? Let me tell you, there's no such thing. Shi Xuan wailed. Shi Wudu continued with his head held high. Everything I have today, I fought for. I will fight for what I don't have. I will change my fortune if fate denies me. My fate is up to me, and not the heavens. This was the first time Xie Lian had heard such an interpretation of that proverb. Not simply rejecting fate, but forcibly altering it. And he was blown away even through the chills that washed over him. He Xuan also burst out laughing, sounding like his eyes had been opened to a brand new world by Shi Wudu's unshakable tenacity in refusing to admit his own wrongs. His expression grew more and more frightening, and Shi Xuan broke down. Gugu, please, I beg you, please stop talking. Please shut up. Help. However, Shi Wudu's smug arrogance was undaunted. Xuan, Gugu will go first. I will wait for you down below. Before he finished his sentence, He Xuan placed his hand on his head and gripped his hair. Shi Xuan's soul was going to leave his body. The iron chains banged and clanged wildly against the wall. Mingxiong! I'm sorry. We're the ones who sinned. We're the ones at the wrong. It's my fault. My brother did what he did because of me. My brother's gone mad. He's gone crazy. Can't you see? You... He wanted to beg for forgiveness, for mercy, but he couldn't. All he could do was kowtow endlessly with his eyes. He Xuan slowly turned to gaze at him. For a fleeting moment, he seemed to have remembered something. He calmed and stopped. The sight of this was like a ray of hope, and Shi Xuan let out a breath of relief. The tears welling in his eyes finally rolled down his cheeks, but before he could speak, he heard He Xuan's cruel reply. You called for the wrong person. In one swift movement, he wrenched Shi Wudu's head from his neck. Blood erupted from the uneven stump of Shi Wudu's neck as his head was yanked from his body. The far-reaching spray coated Shi Xuan's body and face. Shi Xuan could finally endure it no longer and started screaming as if he had just lost his own mind as well. The madmen found it incredibly interesting to see a headless corpse stand without collapsing, and they went wild with delight. They spun around him in circles, clapping and cheering, their bare feet smearing bloody footprints across the floor. Oh my, he's dead, dead. Shi Xuan screamed for who knew how long, screamed until it felt like his soul and spirit had fled his body. And as the screaming finally ceased, he didn't even remember stopping. When he regained his awareness at last, he had collapsed into a lifeless heap on the blood-soaked floor for an unknown amount of time. He Xuan stood not far from him. He was staring commandingly down at Shi Xuan from above. Shi Wudu's head dangled from his hand, eyes still round and wide. A moment later, He Xuan asked in monotone, Do you have anything else to say, Shi Xuan? Shi Xuan's eyes were lifeless. His gaze was unfocused as he stared at the row of urns atop the altar before him and at those two shredded fans on the ground. It was a long time before he mumbled, I want to die. Dream on, He Xuan responded coldly. He Xuan extended a hand toward him, and Shi Xuan closed his eyes. And there you have it, you all. You asked, and I read. So, I have come to the realization that you all like to suffer. That is my conclusion, because this was requested by a few people, and it's not a happy scene. Nevertheless, here we are. The one thing I do want to go back and do really quickly, just because I didn't want to disrupt the vibe of what was being read, is go back and read one of the footnotes. And that was on page 249, where Shi Wudu was talking about his fate. And he said, "My fate is up to me and not to the heavens." It had mentioned that this was the first time that Ch.65 had heard an interpretation as such for that proverb. Well, just so you know, the proverb really slowly is 我命由我不由天. Again, 我命由我不由天. So then if we just say it all together, and hopefully we'll remember to put it in the description for you all to see, but 我命由我不由天. And that means my destiny, or as it says here in the book, my fate is up to me and not to the heavens, generally used by those who refuse to bow down to the heavens and accept their fate. But again, he was talking specifically about altering fate. So I just wanted to share that with you all really quickly. And I don't really have a lot of words to say about this specific scene, only that, man, it was terrifying. And I don't know if you all have heard the version in Mandarin. Ooh, but when I tell you, because it's the audio drama, so they've got all the effects and everything, like nothing compares to that. It is so good. And it makes you just feel like, but man, He Xuan was devastatingly cruel. And I'm not even saying he was wrong for it, but the man was devastatingly cruel, and the way he just ripped his head off. Whew. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy this while I am on my week-long break. I will see you all next time, whenever next time will be, when we cover another section or chapter of one of the stories that won't be read on my channel, but I sometimes just might like to pick a little crumb from. So have a great day or a great night, and 我爱你们.